We are 3 weeks away from Election Day, and one of the most competitive congressional races is in Maryland's 6th District. And to help you make an informed decision, we've invited both candidates who want to succeed David Trone, the current office holder, to our studio to discuss these issues. But today we are joined by Republican Neil Parrott. He's a resident of Hagerstown, an engineer, and a former state delegate, and he's hoping third time is the charm in running for Maryland's 6th District. In fact, he ran before in 2020 and 2022. Big warm welcome to Mr. Parrott. Thank you for joining me.
Simone, it's great to be on your show this afternoon. Thanks for having me.
We have a lot of ground to cover, but look, I just wanted to dive right in because look, you've been through this before. You're a former delegate, you've run in the seat in years past, but this year it's an open seat. What's different, especially given that there's no incumbency advantage?
Well, that's a huge difference. There's no incumbent. David Trone, when he ran last time, he spent $13 million. So not only was he incumbent, he spent a lot of money. And then favorable, Maryland 2 years ago, it just wasn't a really good Republican year in the state of Maryland. For lots of different reasons, it just wasn't. So a lot of Republicans stayed home, but we're seeing that totally contrasted this time. It's an open seat. Our spending is not even. She's outspending me, however, not anywhere close to David Trone kind of spending. And people are very, very excited to vote this time. They've seen 4 years of a Biden-Harris administration. My opponent, Delaney, worked in that administration and had to stop in order to run for Congress. And they see that the last 4 years have really not helped us. We're spending too much money. You look at the cost of groceries, it's gone up 25%, electricity 30%. People can't get loans for houses because the interest rates are too high, and that continues to this day. So people have major concerns. I'm a problem solver, an engineer, and I'm looking forward to going to DC to try and help move us forward and help people in District 6.
Well, I wanted to dig into something because by all indications, this might be a really close race. And so I'm curious, what's your message to those undecided voters out there, those people who are really on the fence?
Well, that's really the message. We need to balance the budget in DC. You know, both parties have borrowed money and done things that have gotten us into really a financial bad shape. You know, the interest on the debt, if you take the entire military spending and Medicare, you add those together, that's more, the interest on the debt is more than both of those expenses. Just to give you an idea, it's just huge. We cannot continue to spend money like we've been doing. And so that's one thing I want to do is make sure we balance the budget, try to bring our finances under control, and also try to make sure that we have costs going down for individuals. So we help things that make the grocery costs go down. There are a lot of things that we can do to bring the electricity costs down. Trump has said he wants to bring it down by half. I think that can happen by changing the policies that are in place right now.
I wanted to expand on this because, you know, when we think of key issues, we hear voters time and time again when I'm talking to people, they say, look, I can't afford basic things. I can't make ends meet. You know, whatever you said, that you touched on the groceries. Groceries are expensive. The economy is really top of mind for them. And so how would you make things better economically for Marylanders, something that is tangible, that they can say, hey, this is why I'm voting for you?
Well, that's exactly right. So by balancing the budget, not taking so many loans, with trillions of dollars of loans, some of it was under the Trump administration, and then a lot more happened under the Biden-Harris administration. We can't continue to operate like this. And when you take a lot of loans, basically what happens is you're flooding the market with a lot of new dollars. But when you have a lot more of something, but let's say this iPhone, it's still worth what an iPhone is worth. So you're going to pay a lot more dollars for that iPhone than you would have before, or for that corn or whatever it is that you're buying. Also with gasoline, there are practical things that we can do. You know, the Biden-Harris administration, they blocked the pipeline, the Keystone XL pipeline going from Canada to southern United States, but at the same time approved a pipeline that went from Russia to Europe. That was the Nord Stream 2 pipeline. That didn't make sense. It was blocked. We didn't want Russia to be able to give that oil and get rich off of Europe, and we wanted to help our own country. So we need to reverse that type of policy and help us to have good, clean energy in this country and be able to use it. We were a net exporter of energy under the Trump administration. Of course, now we're a huge importer of energy. But we can become a net exporter again if we use our resources properly.
Okay, I wanted to pivot here. You know, last week in Detroit, former President Trump proposed making auto loan interest tax deductible again. And so this was something that was done away with back in 1986. But some critics argue that it could cost the federal government, you know, $61 billion over 10 years, and it would probably only benefit the wealthy. And I say that because, you know, entry-level car buyers tend to have more modest incomes. They usually take the standard deduction on their income taxes. Where do you stand on this proposal by the former president?
Well, I think it's an interesting proposal. I hadn't heard that. Under the Trump tax cuts before, they greatly increased the amount that people can use when they write off anything. I don't know that I'd be in favor of it. I have to look at that. One thing that I'm really not in favor of is by 2035, the state of Maryland is following California and saying that we can only buy electric vehicles only if it's a new car, any vehicle. I'm completely opposed to that. When people send me to DC, I'm going to make sure that we have freedom of choice when it comes to what kind of car that you want to buy. That's the second highest expense that anyone has. You've got your house first and then your form of transportation. And to say that we're going to have to buy the most expensive type of transportation, the people I'm working with, people in Washington County, you've got Garrett, Allegheny, Washington, Frederick, the top part of Montgomery County, we simply can't afford EV cars. And we need to change that policy. And when they send me to DC, I'll make sure that no state has that ability to take our second highest expense and say you can only buy the most expensive one.
Well, I'm curious, to that point, how do you make that appealing then to someone, a voter who says, hey, the environment is a top priority to me? For example, with some of these EV cars, you get a lot of credits, you get a lot of kickbacks if you purchase them. And so you get some incentives, I would say. How do you speak to those voters who say, hey, the environment is top of mind for me and I drive an EV car, or maybe I want to purchase one in the future? How do you appeal to them?
Well, I think we need to have freedom of choice in cars. So if you want to buy an EV, that's great. If you want to buy a hybrid car, that's good. If you want to buy a gasoline or a diesel car, whatever makes the most sense is what people should do. And the free market will help decide what happens. I will say this, we need to bring manufacturing jobs back, especially to Western Maryland. We've lost a lot. Luke Paper Mill, we lost a couple thousand jobs over a few years. That can't continue. We've got to bring manufacturing back and allow people to want to move back into Western Maryland. And by doing that, we have to change the policies so that we have electricity that's less expensive and we are more competitive on the world market. And unfortunately, right now, under the Biden-Harris administration, they've made these, so it's very, very difficult to have manufacturing in our country. And what we're doing, as far as the environmentals are concerned, in China, they're building 2 new coal power plants each week. Oh, that's the average, 2 new coal power plants each week. They are not clean coal. If we really cared about the environment, we want manufacturing to happen here in this country, and we need to make sure that we have laws that would encourage people to come to this country to do manufacturing.
I wanted to ask, do you think all consumer interest loans should be deductible? So that includes things like credit card interest, which was also done away with in 1986. How does the country pay for it, if you agree with that? Well,
I think housing loans make sense, but we're talking credit card loans, you're talking other kinds of loans, I don't think that makes sense. Okay. Certainly I'm for cutting taxes, but I wouldn't say that that's the way to do it, especially when the deductible is already so high. We're not talking about average people that would be deducting these things. So I think we need to help the average Americans make sure that those tax cuts go down, make sure that businesses can operate here and be successful and not have the highest tax rates in the country like Harris is now proposing. We need to keep it lower so that people will, again, have manufacturing here, want to have their businesses here in the United States.
Let's talk about housing. So on your website, you talk about working to incentivize the building of more housing nationwide. We know this is a big topic of concern. What do you mean by that? And what types of incentives, how would it help? What would you tell someone who's looking to vote for you or against you on this?
Well, I think certainly right now there's a shortage of housing, and that's why housing is costing a lot more. Certainly the interest rates are higher, so regular people are having a really hard time buying a house. We need to bring those interest rates down by having financial responsibility. We also need to make sure that other costs, like the cost of oil and transporting these goods, that those come down. But we do have a real problem with the border. We need to secure the border. When you have illegal aliens that are coming over 8 million in just the last 3 years. That's more than the entire population of the state of Maryland in just 3 years have come into this country and are staying, and now they want housing. Of course we have a shortage of housing. You can't have a whole state coming into the United States and not have some ramifications. So we've got to secure the border, and that has to be one of the things I'll be doing day one. We need to build the wall and have electronic surveillance above and below the wall.
Okay, that was actually exactly where I was going, and I wanted to get more in the weeds with you on this because, again, you said we have an immigration issue, the border, of course. What do you do tangibly if you win the office to find solutions to what's going on there? So you said build the wall. What else?
Well, we have to, first of all, secure the border. That's the very first thing we have to do. And in Maryland, we have over 2,000 people that are dying each year because of fentanyl deaths. Now, that's new. It hasn't happened before, but when you have a wide open border like we have now, the cost of fentanyl has really gone down because the supply is much, much higher. So we have to secure it to prevent these drug deaths that we're having right now. Also, we need to secure it because of human trafficking. We have kids, about 300,000, if I understand right, that are just lost in the United States. And they're worried that they're being targeted for sex slaves, they're regular slaves. We can't allow this to continue. We have to secure the border. We have to keep track of where these children are.
Let me ask you about the Dreamers. Where do you stand with that?
Yeah, so the very first thing we have to do is secure the border. There can be no doubt or any question about that. After we secure the border, then there's going to have to be a broader discussion. There's 435 people in the House of Representatives, 100 in the Senate. Something needs to happen. We need to make sure that it's more streamlined for legal people who want to come to this country legally to come here. The best and brightest from around the world should be the ones that we're attracting. We're already attracting them, but we're not letting them come in. And I've talked to a lot of people like from India or from China who can't even get a green card. It's really crazy. They have a job here, and if they're fired, they're going to have to go back. But if they would get the green card, then they could go to another job. So they're kind of really stuck with the company they're at right now. So I think it's going to be very important that we streamline the process to come in. And then with those Dreamers, we need to address that as a body in Congress and the U.S. Senate and the President and come up with something that makes sense.
So potentially separately. In that, like, to your point, we can take a look at the Dreamers and what they need and potentially deal with them in a separate capacity. Is that what you're saying?
It is. First, you have to secure the border. You don't secure the border, there's no talking about anything else. Mm-hmm. You got to do that first. After we do that, then we can start having conversations.
All right, let's talk about reproductive rights. We know this is so important to voters, specifically abortion rights, since the Dobbs v. Jackson decision that overturned Roe v. Wade. What should Congress's role be moving forward?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. My opponent's trying to make this a highlight of her campaign. She's actually lied about my position. She says that I wouldn't have exceptions for abortion if it was up to me for life of the mother or for incest. And of course I have those exceptions, or for rape as well. Of course I have those exceptions, and I always have. But really, the answer is that it's now been returned to the states. And I agree with Nikki Haley when she was in the debate. Some people disagreed with her, but I agreed with her fully. She said, this is really not an election campaigning thing that we should really be talking about, because we're not going to get 60 votes in the U.S. Senate to go one way or the other. Either side is just not going to get those votes. So let's concentrate on things that we can solve. We can solve the cost and trying to bring down inflation. We can solve securing that border. We can solve trying to get new jobs here in Western Maryland. Those are the things I'm concentrating on when I go to Congress.
Okay, let's talk about question 1 is on the Maryland ballot this November. If passed, the ballot measure would amend the state constitution to enshrine reproductive freedom, right? Supporters say it would protect access to abortion, among other procedures. Where do you stand specifically on this ballot question?
Yeah, I think it's really important that people see that question. Right now in Maryland, you can have abortions all 9 months of pregnancy. And question 1 doesn't change that. It does put it in the Maryland Constitution, which makes it much harder to change. And there's also questions about question 1. Does it just apply to abortion, or does it also apply to transgender rights and transgender surgeries and not having parental permission to get those things, like we're seeing in D.C. right now, where they've actually taken a child away from the parents who wanted to go through transition. The parents didn't want them to. So I think there are a lot of dangers. I'm going to be voting against question 1. I think a lot of people, my friends, will be voting for it. People just need to study it. I encourage them to look into what they really feel like they want on that question. But when it comes to the federal law and federal election, that's just not going to be one of my main concerns. Abortion is just not. And I don't think either side is going to affect any change anytime soon. I don't see either party having 60 votes in the U.S. Senate.
Okay, I wanted to ask you about something that you said during a Maryland House floor debate back in 2022 when it came to strengthening domestic violence laws. Let's go ahead and listen to the soundbite.
In common law in Maryland, it's already against the law to rape your wife. That's no question about that. It's against the law. But we're talking like 4th degree offense. I mean, you just pat them in the wrong way, they take it sexually inappropriately. That's marriage. Those things are protected in marriage. And this law gets rid of that. This is ridiculous. And that's why I'm voting no, and I encourage the body to vote no. Thank you.
Now, your opponent has said that your views on this are extreme, and I'd like your response on it, please. Well,
first, I have a wife. I have 2 daughters. I want them to be completely safe. Of course, I'm against any kind of sexual intimidation or harassment inside marriage. However, I don't think that it's appropriate to have workplace sexual harassment laws in the family. And especially with a husband and wife. It just doesn't make sense. And actually, there were a lot of concerns that year in the state Senate. They actually stopped the bill. They had passed an amendment that actually, with that amendment, I probably could have been able to vote for the bill. But they passed that amendment in the state Senate. It went to conference. They killed the amendment, so it went back to the House without the amendment. The House passed it. The Senate looked at it and said, no, we're not going to pass it. And so it failed that year.
We've got about 2 minutes left in this interview, so we got a lot of ground to cover. I'm curious, where do you stand on the war between Israel and Hamas and the casualties in Gaza?
we need to stand with our biggest ally, Israel, in the area. People are talking about a two-state solution. My opponent likes that idea. I think that's a non-starter on day one. We need to make sure that Israel can defend themselves. I was really thankful to see the administration sending over some defensive weapons. They just sent over this last weekend. We need to stand with them and help them to be able to defend themselves. What we saw on October 6th was horrific. People who are listening, they can remember the paragliders coming in with machine guns on a soccer field. They were having parties. These were innocent people that were killed, and they have to be able to defend themselves. There is a problem with Gaza Strip. What are we going to do with that? But first, Hamas has got to be destroyed. Also, the hostages that are left need to be released. And of course, you've got Hezbollah on the other side that's attacking Israel and Iran. And the real problem here is that the Biden-Harris administration funded Iran. And because they've got so much money, they're able to fund Hamas, they're able to fund Hezbollah. And that's what's really created a lot of the division and problems in the Middle East right now.
All right, look, I wish we had all the time in the world. I mean, we covered a lot of ground, and we sincerely appreciate your time, your expertise today. Is there anything I've missed that you want to touch on in closing?
Well, if anyone is curious, please go to my website. It's neilparrott.org, neilparrott.org. And I really humbly ask for everyone who lives in the 6th District to vote for me in this election.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Parrott. Certainly appreciate your time today. Thank you.
Thank you.
And we wanted to let everyone know that we also have extended an invitation to Democratic challenger April McClain Delaney for an interview. We are awaiting word on that date. We'll be back after the break.